You ready to do this, Britta?
I am ready, Spence. Punch it, Chewy.
Welcome, Super Friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot tonight is Britta Stapleton.
Hello.
We're two nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 120. We release every Thursday morning. You can find us on our website, fortofnerd.com. We have links to iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, and everywhere podcasts are available. Stop by and relax a while. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and get us automatically each and every week in your ear holes. Britta, welcome back to the podcast. I know it feels like a long time since we recorded last. However, that episode only released like 2 weeks ago.
I know.
The old magic switcheroo.
The magic of internet podcasting.
That's
I don't know.
what it is. Yeah,
exactly.
So we're back home. What's going on? What's new with you?
Oh my gosh. Pretty much I've just been sick since we've been back.
And sleeping.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
You slept a lot.
I have slept a lot. I've been thoroughly exhausted. That trip was a lot of fun, but let me tell you, boys and girls, it's exhausting to do 2 full weeks of Disney, even if one of them is a cruise. It is exhausting. Came home last Saturday. Was it really last Saturday? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little over a week ago.
Yeah, and was just ridiculously sick. My niece got sick on the trip, and everyone got sick, and I came home. Luckily, I made it through basically the whole trip feeling fine. And Sunday, I was just out of it. I couldn't even get out of bed. I just felt horrible, and I've had a sore throat ever since, so forgive me if I cough, but through Spencer's magic of editing, you may never hear that.
Yeah, just cough when I'm talking. That's the real trick.
There you go.
You said everyone got sick. That's not entirely true.
Not everyone.
This guy over here didn't get sick.
Not yet.
Not yet. That's why I'm downstairs and you're upstairs right now when we're recording. I don't want that dang crap, that garbage, that junk.
I know.
Ugh.
Me and the boys got it. My parents got it. My mom still sounds really sick. I talked to her for a couple minutes today, and she still sounds terrible. And like, you can hear it in my voice. I still have a bad throat. So what are you going to do? Too much fun.
So today on my lunch break, I took like 5 minutes, Britta. I haven't told you this yet, but I went to the website of the dive place where I did the scuba diving on St. Thomas when we were in the Caribbean. And I kind of went through and I found the picture of me that they took underwater.
Oh, nice.
And so I bought it for like $10. I'll show it to you later tonight, but it's me underwater and I'm giving like the okay sign and you can see bubbles kind of trailing out from my regulator. It's kind of cool.
Post it on the social media.
Yeah, I may have to put it up there.
Share it with the super friends.
That, and I saw a bunch of other photos of just like the beautiful blue waters and like all the kind of some of the things we saw when we were down there. And Britta can attest to this, super friends. I have done a lot of looking at like dive schools around here to get certified like every single day for the last week since I've been home. It is on my brain.
Yeah.
It's something I'm going to do.
You're a little obsessed right now. And it sounds fun, but right now, like being sick and like not being able to actually breathe very well in general and being stuffed up and coughing, like scuba just sounds terrible to me right now. But probably when I feel better, it'll sound more fun. Because it sounded fun before I got sick.
Yeah, see, I think you're going to want to go.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't think you're going to want to go get certified by yourself. I think you're going to want to go with me or with someone else if you knew someone. But I'm going to put it to you like this. I'm putting a time limit on this, that if I do not get a positive, affirmative, like, yes, I'm on board, let's go do this by a certain date, then I'm just going to go ahead and do it on my own.
Well, I know I'll do it. I just have to feel better to be more motivated. Plus, at work this last week, I don't know, everyone was talking about scuba diving, and like half of my office is certified, and the other half like mostly want to get certified. So a bunch of people are like, yeah, let's just go do it. So I
talked to a guy at my work, And he was kind of asking the trip, and I was telling him about the scuba diving. I enjoyed it. And he said, oh, yeah, he says, I'm certified, and I was certified doing this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And, he's like advanced certifications.
Nice.
And he said, I've blown bubbles all around the world. And I was like, I don't know why, but that sounds so freaking cool. I want to be able to say I've blown bubbles all around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a couple of coworkers that just have done it everywhere. Like a couple of them that just love scuba diving. They're always going places to do it.
So then on top of that, this last Saturday I had a meeting with my motorcycle club. Come to find out, my brother in the club, Ghost, he is a certified scuba diver. He just got back from, I think, being in like California somewhere.
Yeah.
I think. Anyway, he was showing me a bunch of video he took on his last scuba trip. And he said, like, they pretty much, when it's just like him and his wife, or maybe him and some buddies, they'll go on trips. They'll try to plan trips where there's places they can do scuba. And so I've been looking at, like, some scuba trips, like vacations where, like, specifically we could just go and, like, scuba dive for 2 or 3 days, like the Caribbean, Fiji, Bermuda, like, stuff like that, Hawaii.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Britta, visiting the mouse is fine and all, but I'm ready to start doing some other kind of trips.
Oh yeah, it's time to do something different. So
it's time to do some fun stuff that we can leave the kids behind with, grandma and grandpa.
Oh, I'm so ready to do a trip without the children. I want to have a real vacation. They call it a trip when you bring your children. It's a vacation when you don't.
The Disney cruise was probably the closest we've had to a vacation.
It's true.
I mean, that was wonderful. I enjoyed it. I want to go again. Even with the kids, like, there was lots of times when we weren't with them, or they were being taken care of and pampered by Maria down at the other end of the table, and we didn't have to.
Oh my gosh, Maria, I miss her.
I know, right? I was like,
need to
how
write
much
her a
would
letter.
It cost to get you to come work for us? I say that, and I'm like, I have no money to pay someone to take care of my children. I can, barely afford for us to take care of our children.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway. So I've been kind of looking at that, Super Friends. It's on my brain. And so if you scuba, this is not the question of the week because we're far from that. But if you scuba, or you want to scuba, or you're interested in scuba, or you just want to talk scuba, let me know because I'm all about that right now.
Yeah, this is current obsession. There's always one, and this is what it is.
It is my current obsession.
Yeah, that
is true. Other than that, we did a little thing this weekend with the boys. We're trying to bring a little more discipline into our household, and not not the kind of discipline my dad would have used, whipping out the belt and cranking it over me, but more of we want our kids to start doing things like chores and having responsibilities. So we made a chore chart with little bottle caps and magnets on a magnetic whiteboard. And Super Friends, you'll be proud to know that on each one of those bottle caps is a sticker of either the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, or Spider-Man. Yep. They're all kind of different, but they're, kind of Avengers, Marvel Comics themed. And when the kids make their bed in the morning, they get to go get one of the bottle caps. And when they, tidy up their shoes and their backpacks after school, they get another bottle cap. And if they get so many bottle caps in the week, they get, time on their iPad on the weekend. But it's kind of cool though, because it's something that we've talked about doing, but it's really incentivizing the kids. Like today, they did all of their chores in all 8 categories, and they were happy to do it.
Yeah, it was the first weekday, and I can't even tell you how long, that there was no whining, no fit throwing, no screaming about getting dressed in the morning and getting breakfast and getting out the door. They woke up and first thing were like, Mommy, what can I do on my chore chart to get a magnet? So they immediately
this is a Monday.
did all their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a Monday, which is usually the worst day of the week.
Right, and after a time change when everyone's super exhausted. So I don't expect this to last for long. The novelty of it will wear off, and the children will start not wanting to do these things, but that's when the discipline comes in, and we start taking the magnets away and have consequences for their actions. But we're starting small, people. Basic things. Making their beds. Getting themselves dressed without throwing a fit. Brushing their teeth. We're real basic here. We're working up to, the advanced level stuff.
See, you say basic, but I'm thinking if we can get our kids doing this, I'm going to feel like dad of the freaking year.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, it's just this week for me, and I know for Britta, it's just really been about kind of getting back into the swing of things, you know, kind of going back at work after being gone for so long. Mm-hmm. And I still feel like I'm way behind on things. I got a lot to do at work.
Me too.
But this is a time, super friends, that I'm so happy to be here to spend a little bit of time here in the Fortress with all of you and to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture and just to relax. So, what do you say, Britta? Should we get to the relaxing and the fun and the wonderfulness that is the Fortress of Nerditude?
Like, are you thinking maybe we should kill some bothans?
I'm thinking it's that time. We sharpened the knives for a reason.
Let's do it. Let's kill those bothans.
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, Britta, we are into Rebel Intelligence. We have murdered many Bothans. What do you have for me this week?
Well, first, you may have heard of a movie that is coming out in about a month by the name of Shazam.
Say that again?
Shazam.
Nice.
Yeah. Like, as I said, this doesn't come out until April 5th, but Warner Brothers actually decided to show it to critics early, which doesn't usually happen. Sometimes that can be a mistake, but apparently it worked out well. Critics are pleasantly surprised with this one, pretty happy. Their like actual reviews aren't out until I think like March 23rd, the end of the month. But they were able to like share their reactions and things like that on Twitter. And there are a lot of positive reactions to this movie on Twitter. I've read a number of them, and a lot of them mention like has a really good family, like emotional story, has a lot of comedy. Kids are amazing in it. Just like how fun it is. Like people are just loving this, and everyone's saying like Zachary Levi was like born for this role.
I wonder if DC's kind of playing the strategic game here a bit by not allowing full reviews, but allowing like, you know, just kind of their reactions to the movie, because I think it's pretty universally known now that if you embargo reviews on your movie till like the day the movie releases, that means it's going to be a crap movie. Whereas if you let them like release earlier in the week, typically that means, you know, you've seen the reviews, you feel pretty confident, because let's be honest, we live in a culture now where people like take in reviews a lot more seriously to decide whether or not they're going to go see it, or they look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, or, you know, those sort of things. So I wonder if this was just kind of if it's positive, if we can kind of leak some of that early to help build momentum and buzz, because honestly, DC's got to get a few wins under their belt.
No, I'm sure. I totally believe that's what they've done, because they are waiting to see what was going to happen. And it looks like it's gone in their favor this time, because they've had really favorable reactions. And it looks like, you know, the reviews, like I said, are coming out on March 23rd. So that's like a week and a half at least before the actual release of the movie. So I think they're just trying to create some buzz now, some positive buzz to get people really, you know, excited and wanting to go see this.
What's your excitement level?
You know, when I first heard of it, I was like, I had no idea what Shazam was. All I could think of wasn't there some like weird like kid movie or cartoon or something? Like
with Shaquille O'Neal?
Yes, Shaquille O'Neal, right? Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that doesn't sound awesome.
He's a big genie.
Yeah, a genie. That's what I thought of. And I'm assuming it doesn't have anything to do with this comic.
Hey kid. Anyway.
Yeah, it's totally different, right?
Yeah,
but that's what
totally
was it. That's what was in my brain. And I was like, oh, lame. I don't want to see that. But then after I saw the initial like previews and stuff of this, first of all, I heart Zachary Levi. Like, I love Chuck. Like, he's awesome. But so when I saw the previews, I was like, okay, this looks actually really funny, and not like, because I think DC tends to take themselves a little too seriously. And they're always having these like dark, angsty superheroes and whatever. This is so the opposite of that from what I can tell. I mean, it basically looks like a superhero version of Big, which I'm down with. That sounds awesome.
I mean, that's kind of what it is. Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's a movie I want to go see.
I didn't, when originally I heard it was being made, I was like, I don't know, maybe, we'll see. Let's see what a preview looks like, a trailer. Every single preview and trailer I've seen so far has me looking at this thing thinking, this is just going to be a fun movie.
Right.
And it's going to be worth watching. There's going to be a lot of laughs, and you're going to come out of it saying, probably not the best superhero movie you've ever seen, but probably one of the funnest experiences you've had with a superhero movie.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of putting it next to, in my mind, like the bar's kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy and like Thor Ragnarok. Like I'm expecting it to be good, but also have a lot of comedy in it and just kind of a feel good kind of attitude.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
super
thinking.
entertaining and fun. That's kind of how I'm kind of looking at it too.
So good. Well, good. I'm glad that those reviews or the reactions, I guess we should say, not reviews, the reactions are fairly positive.
Yeah.
Okay, Britta, I want to talk about something, and we can't go into super depth on this because we could go on, well, I know I could go on for a long time.
Okay.
But you know how we've talked in the past that Amazon is going to do a Lord of the Rings TV show, and we've talked about how they're going to make it for like something like $1 billion, and it's, they've got the rights to pretty much kind of they could basically redo the movies if they wanted to, right?
I actually had no idea. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know that. So this is brand new to me.
Okay, well, Stu and I had talked about it. Yeah. That's fine. No, I'm not crying. I'm not crying. You're crying. It's just dusty in here, and I got some in my eye.
I still love you, like a whole lot.
Yeah, I believe it. No, so anyway, like Amazon's going to make this like $1 billion, like massive. I mean, that you can kind of tell that they're looking at the Game of Thrones and saying like, hey, if we can buy this property, we could do this
cool
and make it really big. Great. Amazon's got the money to do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a little point of contention with a lot of like real hardcore fans. Like, don't retread the movies, granted it's been, now close to, getting on 20 years or so since Fellowship came out, but like, just leave it alone, right? That's what they're kind of saying.
Sure.
However, recently, like within just like the last couple days, Amazon released a picture of a map, and they, kind of showing like the world in which it takes place. Now, to most people, a map is not going to be anything of consequence. Like, you're not going to care. You're like, oh, okay, great, sure. What does this matter? Well, what's interesting is that on this map shows the island of Numenor. And you might know the name Numenor because that is the race and lineage of Aragorn, from the movies and from the book.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. If you are a Tolkien lore and you know your Professor Tolkien's works, you know that the island of Numenor actually sank, and basically because of some things that happened with the Numenorians breaking their vow to the Valar, which are kind of like the gods of that world, that basically the Valar sunk the isle into the sea sometime before the end of the Second Age. So what that means is we're seeing a map showing where this is all going to be taking place with that island. This means that this is most likely going to take place in the Second Age. The Third Age is all of the stuff with Sauron and the quest for the ring.
Okay.
The Second Age, if you remember the very, very beginning of Fellowship, where you see Elendil and his son Isildur, and Elendil, cuts the ring off, and Isildur takes it, right? And then eventually it slips, right? That big battle with Sauron at the very, very end of that's at the end of the Second Age of Men.
Okay.
So it stands a good reason to believe that we can see all the things that'll happen up till the death of Elendil, the king of Gondor, and the One Ring going to his son Isildur. We could see all the stuff kind of leading up to that. So we could see, all of the things. We could see kind of like the birth of Sauron. We could see some of the things that are going to kind of lead into that. And I don't know if that means that'll be a couple seasons of this. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it'll be, a long time, but what it does mean though is that the idea that they're going to go get Ian McKellen to play Gandalf again and go get Viggo Mortensen to play Aragorn. Like, this happens all before they were ever around, before they were ever born. The only one they could go back out and get would be Elrond, because he was there at the very end of the Second Age.
Right. They showed him at like the war and all that stuff.
Right. So he could be there.
So this is kind of like the origins of the ring.
Well, that's the thing, is like we could see the ring get created.
Okay.
And so that's one of those things where, like, if you followed it and you kind of know how it was created and how all that took place, like, that could be part of this big show that Amazon's planning. We don't know. So
possibly, oh my God, Galadriel. Because wasn't she like one of the, at least in the history thing, they showed her as one of the elves that got one of the elven rings or whatever, right?
Right.
So she might have been there during that time as well.
Yeah.
So that's another one. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There might be a little bit of crossover.
Yeah.
But depending on how they do it and where they do it too. Yeah. So it's really interesting. It's really exciting. We're probably gonna have to wait towards like the end of 2021 to actually see anything of consequence on Amazon's, Prime Video, their service. But it's something I'm definitely looking forward to. Potentially 2 years away from having more, J.R.R. Tolkien work and Lord of the Rings related material on film.
That's awesome. I think that could be really cool.
I am super excited about it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, so here, I got another thing here. The show Arrow, which, we've only watched the first 2-3 seasons?
Yes, I think we're in the third season.
Yeah,
maybe.
I'm like, we're still pretty early on. Well, Arrow has announced that after this 8th season that's going to start this fall, it will be ending. That will be its last season. So, Stephen Amell announced on his Twitter that, he's loved playing Oliver Queen, but this is going to be the final run. And they're doing just a 10-episode season this fall. So that's going to be the end of that. So I am very much behind on this.
Right.
But we've watched a lot of like The Flash that, it overlaps with Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, I think Black Lightning.
It's all kind of set in that same Arrowverse.
Yeah, so I'm wondering what's going to happen with some of the, I know some of the other shows have not had as long of runs, because Arrow, I think, was the first one that kind of set them all off. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't necessarily think, though, that the other shows are going to end just because Arrow ends.
Right.
So it's not like, Arrow's going to collapse. So the whole kind of, Arrowverse, as they call it, the DC's kind of TV verse is necessarily going to collapse. Because shows like The Flash are incredibly popular and they stand on their own. Typically, you only get the one crossover event a year that kind of hits all four of those major shows, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Arrow, and Flash. And depending on how they wrap it up, it's one of those things where you don't expect a show like this to go on forever.
Right.
It just can't. You get to a point you're like, okay, well, it's I feel it's like it's different with the movies, because with the movies, let's take, over on the Marvel side, Captain America. Captain America did 3 movies kind of that are considered Captain America movies.
Right.
And then he's been in 3 Avengers films, and then it's soon to be a 4th Avengers film. And then, a little bit of cameos. So that actor has portrayed the character, like coming up on a total of like 9-10 times. So, at this point you could say, okay, he's had a good run.
Yeah.
But you look at a guy like Stephen Amell. Stephen Amell's done like 7 seasons with like 22 to 24 episodes per season. These are hour-long episodes. Yeah. So he's doing like 24 hours of TV every year for 7 years straight, and then he's going to do 10 in the last. So, in theory, he's been this character way, 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 way longer than anyone that's in, like, the movie verse, right?
Right, yeah.
And so you know that, like, guys like that, they love what they do, they love working with the people, but they know that there's a time limit. You can't do this forever.
Yeah.
Most big shows that really catch on, it seems like 10 seasons is kind of like the cap, kind of where a lot of big shows, like I know Friends went like 10 seasons and Cheers was like 10 seasons. And I think Frasier was 10 seasons or like close like thereabout, 9, right? Yeah. Close thereabout.
Yeah. Well, it gets to a point where you're kind of telling the same story over and over again, and there's not a lot of places for it to go, and it gets kind of worn out. Yes.
So it makes sense to me that they're going to have to end it at some point. Maybe he still comes back in some things. It all depends on how they end it, and I'm behind on that show as well. So I can't tell you like what's currently going on in the show and what my speculation is on how they'll end it. Will he die? Will he live? Will something happen? Like I just can't tell you that because we have no idea where it is
right now.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting. I will tell you though, Britta, there is a show that I am interested in seeing, although I was not interested in watching the first season at all. And this is going to shock many people, but let me ask you, Britta, if I were to say to you, what's one of my favorite 80s movies of all time, what would you say?
Karate Kid?
Absolutely. The Karate Kid. I love that movie. So we know that there was this TV show on YouTube, the YouTube Red or whatever, called Cobra Kai.
Right.
And I looked at that and I went, oh, this just seems like a cash grab. It doesn't look very good to me. Yeah. Well, there's going to be a second season of this. So obviously it did well enough that they did a second season. And they just released a trailer for it just a couple days back. And I was like, okay, let me watch it. And so I've watched it. And now it looks like in this season, it's Billy Lawrence, or Johnny Lawrence, played by Billy Zabka, and then Ralph Macchio's Daniel LaRusso. And Daniel LaRusso's opening up a karate dojo, Miyagi-Do. And then you've got obviously the Cobra Kai that's being kind of run by Johnny Lawrence. And it looks like the whole buildup of this season is going to be Miyagi-Do versus freaking the Cobra Kai. And like they're both trying to train their students, and so like it looks like we're getting like this kind of scrappy group of like up and coming karate kids, karate stars that they're trying to train with two different philosophies. And the old sensei John Kreese, who used to run Cobra Kai, is there, like trying to push Johnny Lawrence on. And the interesting thing was like, the trailer is so freaking good. Like I have bought in just on this one trailer going, man, I really want to see this crap because they show like right like towards the end of it, you see Johnny Lawrence and one of his students is filming something and he's like, is that good? Is that good? Look who's like, okay, well, special it up and make it look, kind of good. And he's like, and then end with like a big shot like of the snake at the end. And then it's like, boom, it says, Cobra Kai, and it shows the snake at the end of like the actual trailer, not like what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that is so smart. It is so freaking meta. It made me laugh. And I was like, I had no desire to see this thing, the original first series they did. And now I've seen the trailer for the second series. I'm like, oh crap. How am I going to get my hands on this? Because I want to watch this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is going to come out April 24th. So if you're interested, Super Friends, and watch this, April 24th is when the next season, the full 10 episodes, will arrive on the YouTube Premium. So their premium service.
Nice. We're gonna have to try and
what do you think,
check
Britta?
that
Do you have any interest in that?
I mean, I didn't before, but and I actually remember when it first came out, I had no interest, and then I listened to an interview with both Ralph Macchio and Billy Zabka on The Nerdist with Chris Hardwick. Yeah, and they were talking about
not the Nerdist, right?
Well, now it's ID10T, but
yeah, ID10T. Okay,
yeah, but I think I can't remember when I listened to it if it was still Nerdist or not. It might have just changed. Anyway, besides the point, I listened to the interview and like Chris Hardwick was talking about it and like what was happening and like kind of the idea of the show and everything. And I kind of was like, oh, that actually sounds really interesting. And then I sort of just forgot about it. And, you know, we never watched it. So I'd definitely be willing to give it a try because, I mean, who doesn't love the Karate Kid? And if it's as cool as the trailer for the second season made it look, I'm interested in that, you know?
So let me ask you this real quickly. When you watch the Karate Kid, who do you root for?
Ralph Macchio's character?
He's not the Karate Kid. No, I'm just messing. There's that whole How I Met Your Mother thing, and he's like, I root for Johnny Lawrence, you know, Billy Zabka, the Karate Kid, the only kid that knew karate. That other like weak, you know, punk, you know, got a lucky kick in or something. Anyway,
yeah,
it's a good piece of humor right there. I like it.
Thank
of
you,
course,
Barney.
I totally murdered it, right? Trying to repeat a joke without setting it up. Yeah. Anyway, go see that, Super Friends. Like, seriously, I am reconsidering this. This is me taking back my stamp of like shame, and I'm saying it may be worth a watch.
Nice.
What else you got for us, Britta?
All right. So Disney's streaming, Disney Plus streaming.
Disney Plus. Yeah.
So they made an announcement just recently that, CEO Bob Iger did at the shareholder meeting that eventually Disney Plus would have the entirety of the Disney movie library.
Really?
Yes. Now, no one knows exactly what eventually means, and we also don't know what the entirety of the Disney movie library means, the entire Disney movie library, because that could, you know, that's kind of implying like the old movies, you know, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarves and some of those kind of classics that they usually don't make readily available because Disney likes to hold those in their vault for 10 years and release them. Yeah. Release them once every 10 years and things like that. So I don't know if that kind of stuff will be on there. Also, it leaves a question, if it's everything Disney's created, like, will it have like the Touchstone stuff, you know, like, like Armageddon and Splash, you know, that kind of stuff. Is that going to be part of it? We don't know. It's pretty vague. And what does eventually mean? Is it going to be in months? Is it going to be in years? Is it going to be in, you know, eons? I don't know.
Yep.
But it does say, so my thought is at least all of the animated and like actual like under the Disney label stuff, you know, the live action stuff they made in, you know, the 40s, 50s, 60s, some of that kind of fun stuff.
Like the Apple Dumpling Gang.
Right.
I don't know why I pulled that out of my
Summer
head.
Magic. I love that movie.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
Haley Mills.
Swiss Family Robinson, and, you know.
Was that a Disney?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a Disney.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah, see, I want some of that
stuff
that you can't find as easily anymore. That would be fun, because I love to start having the kids watch some of that kind of fun, older live-action stuff.
I tried going back and rewatching Treasure Island a while ago.
Oh, yeah?
Man, that movie is so slow. I remember it being exciting as a kid, and then I watched it as an adult. I was like,
I don't think I've ever going to watch that
How
one.
much longer is this movie? Yeah.
Yeah, that's not one I've really seen. But yeah, so I mean that's cool. They say that. I mean, you know, when we were on the cruise, the TVs there on the cruise had like the bulk of, you know, most of the Disney animation and stuff. Not everything, but it had a lot of stuff.
Especially the recent stuff, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it had Snow White, the Seven Dwarfs. It had Bambi. It had Dumbo, some of that older stuff. But then it had, for animation, but it also had, like, you know, all the Toy Stories and the Pixar stuff and everything. So that was fun to be able to watch some different things that you kind of don't think about as often. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know we'll be getting the Disney Plus when it comes out. I know we'll be day one adopters.
Yep.
I'm already planning on it. I just hope that
cable.
well, eventually we will for sure. And you know, the funny thing is, Britta, about that is that I've looked at it, and realistically, the things we actually watch on TV are so few now. Mm-hmm. If this Disney Plus, the Disney streaming service, has all of the Disney Junior and kind of like the Disney Channel like shows on that streaming. It's like, hey, we played on Disney Junior. Now you can watch it like a week later or something like that. Or even if it's like a season later, because our kids will never know if they're a season behind.
No.
I definitely, when the time comes, I will drop our cable again and go without, because the 2 or 3 shows that we couldn't get there, we can, I can go buy through, iTunes or Google or something like that.
Right.
Just for those like 2 or 3 shows.
Exactly. Yeah. It'll be a money saver, assuming.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Right. Assume it's not like $40 a month. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But anyway. Okay. So, Britta, March is a big month for us. It's your birthday and my birthday.
Sure.
Do you know who else we share a birthday with this month?
In the month of March?
In the month of March.
Well, let's see. Your sister-in-law, Steph.
Yep, not
And
getting
my
close.
dad.
Colder.
Your sister, Caitlin.
Colder.
My nephew, Truman.
Colder.
we got a lot of family that we share birthdays with.
All happy with they got birthdays in March. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, but you're getting a lot colder from the story I'm going with.
All right,
here.
why don't you tell me?
Batman. That is
no
right.
way.
Batman. Batman
Nice.
is going to mark 80 years since he first appeared in Detective Comics this month. And so to celebrate that, DC has like a lot of things kind of lined up. And I've got a list here. So first of all, there's kind of normal stuff. Like there's going to be panels at South by Southwest and WonderCon, which is, kind of to be expected.
Sure.
But DC's putting out a hardcover anthology for their 1000th issue later this month.
Nice.
There's going to be Batman-themed celebrations at Six Flags, which I grew up near Six Flag, and the Batman ride right after like the 1989 movie they put in at our Six Flags, and I know they went everywhere else, and they put in some Joker rides, and so Six Flags is going to celebrate. There's going to be an entire channel provided by AT&T Networks running Batman-based programming, so I'm assuming like movies or like animated, shows, stuff like that. Then the last thing, the thing that really makes this article interesting. So the Hollywood Reporter is saying that apparently it's South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and this is going to happen on March 15th. So probably like when the podcast is being released or when the Super Friends maybe are listening to this. The convention is going to have a lot of Batman merchandise and photo opportunities and murals and local artists. They're also going to have a swarm. Now, hear me carefully. A swarm of 1.5 million bats released over the Congress Bridge.
Oh my gosh.
In Austin, Texas.
That sounds terrifying.
That's what I thought. I heard that. I was like, that sounds like
real bats?
No, like fake bats. Yes, real bats. Like real bats.
Well, you never know.
No, I'm dead
people
serious.
dressed up like bats?
Yeah, like real, like 1.5 million bats. And they're going to release them over the city. And so I'm hearing this when I was reading this article. I went, all I could think of was Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Right.
But replace like white and gray, like pigeon-looking birds with bats.
Like getting in your hair and stuff and like, ew, like bats just seem, ew.
So that sounds pretty frightening. That sounds really terrifying. So here's the thing. It turns out that pretty much all the bats are already in and around the Congress Bridge because apparently it's one of the largest bat colonies in Texas. And I guess there's no real information on how they plan to release these bats. But I guess sometime around this time of the year, I don't know if there's some sort of like migration, but there's a huge bat colony and I guess like bats from kind of like all over the area kind of like flood into that area around this time. So maybe this is more of the less of them like releasing 1.5 million bats, but more just saying like, we have 1.5 million bats kind of already. And since it's Batman's birthday, we'll say that we're doing something. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll toss up some sort of like sonar bat balloon that like drives the bats to like want to like congregate on it or something. I have no clue.
So it's just lucky timing.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a little bit of bait and switch, like we're going to release the hounds. I mean, the bats. But
oh, wait, they're already there and they do kind of swarm every night.
Yeah.
That's still creepy. And like, why do they live by a bridge? Don't bats live in caves? I mean, what?
Caves, bridges, apparently Austin, Texas.
I don't understand this.
So here's the thing. A few years ago, we talked about the idea like, hey, everyone and their dog was saying, hey, you should move to Austin, Texas. It's kind of like this up and coming place. It's really kind of hip,
Blard.
you know, and I'm hearing like it's the San Francisco of Texas. Yeah, but it has 1.5 million bats that are surrounding a bridge.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think so. Although maybe it would inspire some people to become Batmen. Or something. I don't know. It sounds frightening.
We don't
kind
need
of funny.
We only need one.
Well, you know, many can't hurt, right? The whole like if one is good, 1.5 million's got to be better.
It's like a group of vigilante Batmen. It's a horde of vigilantes.
Seriously, I read the word swarm of 1.5 million bats. I was like, this has got to be a typo. This has got to be like 1,500 bats or something. But
yeah,
I mean, that's like enough bats to like block out the sun entirely.
Yeah. But I mean, it said something like they'd like naturally like in the evenings or something like they go.
Yeah, they go out
like
and they
just
feed.
naturally go out all at the same time or whatever. That's just
they prey upon bugs and
I'll
small
watch that
children.
on TV. I will
Yeah,
not watch that
exactly
in real
right.
life. No, thank you. Ugh.
Yep. Anyway, I just thought you'd enjoy that. That sounds
Thanks.
creepy,
Yeah,
and
I
that's right
super
up your
appreciate
alley.
it. That was amazing.
I know you'll be able to sleep well tonight.
Thanks. I have something you'll actually be excited about.
I was excited about the 1.5 million bats.
Something better.
Okay.
I have Star Wars.
Okay.
Galaxy's Edge. Okay.
There we go.
If you haven't heard by now, you must be living under a rock. But if you are living under a rock, we'll let you know.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. That opening dates for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland and Disney World have finally been officially announced. So Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland opens May 31st.
Okay.
And at Disney World in Florida, it will open August 29th.
We're not going back.
No, we're not. We're not.
Okay.
But I like how they originally said, like, summer. Or I guess they said spring, summer, whatever in Disneyland. But they said fall in Disney World. And August 29th, is that actually fall? I don't actually know. But really, that's like as close to fall as you can get without it actually being fall. I just think that's funny. It's really like...
Yeah, because the last day of summer is like September 20th.
Yeah. It's like literally like right before... Either right after people go back to school or right before everyone... Because it's like the week... It's like... That's got to be like Labor Day weekend, right? August 29th?
No, it'd be the week before Labor Day. Because Labor Day is always the
close.
first... Yeah, the first Monday in...
Anyway.
You know, whatchamacallit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the dates have been announced, but there's actually some kind of like fine print to go along with that.
Of course, there has to be.
Big surprise. But this is interesting. I'm very interested that they're doing this because I was wondering how they were going to manage the crowds, right? For Galaxy's Edge. Because it's going to be insane. Everyone and their dog's going to want to go. Even people who live near the Florida park are going to want to go to the Disneyland if they're like huge Star Wars people or Disneyland people because you want to go to the first one, be there, see both of them, right? And stuff. So here's what Disneyland is saying they're doing is that you're going to actually have to make a reservation for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge between May 31st and June 21st if you want to go during those dates. So, yeah. So you're going to have to get online. So, of course, nothing's going to work and it's going to shut down the Disney site.
Oh, of course. That thing's going to crash hardcore.
Right? And you have to go make... And it's free. It says the reservations are free. So it's probably kind of like making a fast pass or something like that. But when it opens, you can make a reservation if you're going to go between those dates. Or if you are staying at a Disney resort hotel, so like Grand Californian, Disneyland Hotel, Paradise Pier, you automatically get a reservation for every like member of your party, like every registered guest gets a reservation. So they're limiting, obviously, the amount of people. So hopefully it's not going to be like uber insane. Like it's still going to be insane.
Right.
But maybe not uber insane. So also, the other thing they're doing is they're actually opening the parks in like phases.
Yep.
So the first phase is going to be the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. That ride is going to be open along with like a bunch of the shops and, different things like the Black Spire Outpost and, you know, probably like the cantina and stuff.
Yeah.
But the next ride won't open until a later date.
Have they said when that will be?
I think they said, let's see, phase 2 will be, which includes Rise of the Resistance. That's the other ride. It just says later this year.
Okay.
So still this year sometime, but we don't really know when.
So let me ask you this, Britta.
Yeah.
A couple things. First of all, if you had the time and the money, would you want to be one of the first people to go?
Yes and no.
Okay, we'll explain yes and no.
So I would love to because it would be amazing. I would have to be like very specific. I would not have children with me. Like it would be like me and you maybe, or just me, whatever, just adults because they can handle waiting in lines. But so yes, because I really want to go. Like this sounds amazing. Like I would love to be there. I've never been like the first to do something like that or see something. But also no, because I know it's going to be insane. I know the lines are going to be long, even with the reservations. Because you know, sometimes even with fast passes and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like just our trip at Animal Kingdom, I waited in a fast pass line for an hour and a half. Like, I don't want to know what that's going to be like to try and get on the Smuggler's Run ride, even with the reservations.
So here's the thing. I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah. As
much as I love Star Wars, here's the thing that hits me is that going on day one you're not going to have any different experience going a year later because the people that are going to be going a year later are still going to be fanatic Star Wars fans. And so like the feeling of excitement is still going to be there. But day one, it's the line, even a year later, the lines are going to be busy, but the lines are going to be insane on day one. And it's going to be packed like to capacity. So it's going to be hard to get around. It's going to be hard to really kind of like look and take things in. And you're right. I wouldn't want to do it with kids. But here's the thing. I can go a year later and I can get to ride both of the rides. I can experience everything that they have there. And it's going to be the exact same experience because that is the idea that, you know, that Disney does, right? Is that you can go to the Magic Kingdom, you can go to Disneyland and ride the Peter Pan ride today. You can go 15 years from now and ride the Peter Pan ride and still have the exact same magical experience 15 years later.
Right.
So I kind of look at it and go, I'm in no rush as much as I want to. And as much as I kind of have a little insider information on some of these things, I'm okay to wait.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, it was the same thing with like, you know, when they opened Cars Land. Like, I wanted to go right away.
Radiator Springs.
What?
Radiator Springs.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah. So I wanted to go right away. I knew I wasn't going to be able to because it just wasn't in the works at the time when it opened. And when I got to go, it wasn't as novel anymore, which was great because the line was a lot less. It still had really long waits a lot of the time. It still does to this day, but I think that's going to probably drop quite a bit after Star Wars opens because that'll be the newfangled thing. But
and then when the Marvel stuff starts opening up too.
Yeah. There's just so many changes that there's always going to be something new. So some of the other stuff's just going to be a lot easier to do. And I just like the idea of getting to experience something first and doing that. You know, like back in the day when you used to like wait to go to the midnight movies. The releases, you know, and you'd go to the theater at like 9:00 and wait to get in or whatever. I like the idea of that. In practice, I think I would probably be miserable and hate it. So I like to say, yes, I'd love to do it, but really, no, I don't want to do it. And I'm not going to. But I'm going to avoid the parks for a while because they're just going to be continually nutty for the next few years.
That and we did just do a week of Disneyland less than a year ago, and then a week at Disney World, and then a week on a Disney cruise, you know, like just a week ago.
Yeah, but you know, in like another month, I'm going to be like, I need a Disney fix. I want to go to Disneyland again. You know, I'm going to be feeling it.
I don't think you're going to be. I think you're going to have had so much. I think you're going to start talking about planning out the Disney cruise we're going to want to go on in 2 years.
For sure.
And I think you're going to be more interested in doing that. I think there's other things we want to do, so I think you'll probably lay low on it for a while. That's just my guess.
We shall see.
Yeah. Of course, you have the total power to, make me wrong. But anyway, I don't have anything else. Was that the last thing you had for Rebel Intelligence?
Yeah, that was it.
Well, those Bothans did their business and gave us all their intelligence this week. We'll have to do it again next week.
Thank you, Bothans.
So last week, Britta, I had Steve on, which was a lot of fun and kind of unexpected, but I'm glad that it happened. And Steve and I kind of had a conversation about vacations because obviously I just come back from a big vacation and he had recently gone to Disney World. And we kind of talked about this idea of like the all-American vacation, right? Like the great family vacation, the idea that, you watch movies and television and you always see, like the dad and the mom, like taking their kids on a vacation cross country or to some destination.
Yeah.
And so we asked our super friends, if you could go anywhere on a vacation, with or without kids, it doesn't really matter, but if you could go anywhere on a vacation, where would you want to go? And so we asked our super friends and we got some answers. We're going to start over on our email where we always start, and we're going to start with Peter Christensen.
All right.
Or as we now call him, Pierre Christensen.
Ooh,
he says, "Dear nerds, big hug to Stu. Take care of those that need you. But I hope any future co-hosts aren't scared off by the curse of the Bothans." Now, come on, Stu. Come on, Peter or Pierre. That's not a real thing. The curse of the Bothans isn't a thing yet. Okay, he says, from a technical perspective on the YouTube comments, it comes down to a trade-off in the cost of moderation. YouTube's scale is unimaginably huge. Same applies to Facebook, Instagram, etc. Something like 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. Even just processing and service, that is a monumental task. YouTube spends $6.5 billion per year running it. Any human moderation would be far too slow and expensive for that volume of videos and would miss much of the crazy things that over 1 billion users do on the platform. Machine learning algorithms can apply some insights scalably, but it's more like, is there a human in this image, or what pose is this person in? Not nearly the value judgment of, is this an inappropriate photo of a child? Google and Facebook have good tools for addressing a problem once it comes to their attention, but that usually happens because of news, reporting, or popular outcry, and it's much harder to get people to notice that a problem has gone away once they fix it. As an analogy, think how much time and escalation happens between noticing something wrong on your body, going to a doctor, going to a specialist, getting an MRI, finding out you have cancer, getting chemo, and growing your hair back. Spencer excluded on that last one. He says, right now, big tech can address specific known problems well, even hard ones, but cannot generally protect against unknown exploits. At that scale, it functions more like an immune system than car repair, just like how safe societies don't disband their police forces. So expect that this kind of surprising gross stuff will never go away. We were kind of talking, Britta, about how YouTube is basically suspending all comments for any videos that have minors in them because there was some like pedophilia stuff that was going on with YouTube commenters and trying to use it to identify other people. And anyway, so it is really interesting. And knowing that Peter kind of works in a tech industry and kind of has maybe some insights with the company he works for, I think he's probably exactly right on everything he's saying here. It all makes a ton of sense to me. And I think it's his analogy is a very, very strong one here to kind of wrap your head around the idea. Going on, he says, we've had similar discussions about vacations. My wife loves Disney, and I want more of the adventurous travel. Disney is excellent, but as you guys said, the cost can easily reach between $5,000 to $10,000. For reference, we did 8 days in Paris with flights from Seattle, lodging, food, and attractions for 6 people for around $8,000. My point has been that Disney is great, but it's a really bad bang for your buck, and I think it gets worse as you go back more times. But I grew up by Busch Gardens in Tampa, and I've got roller coasters in my blood, not carnival rides. I don't really like the idea of traveling around Europe. I like to stay in one place and settle in. Yes, in Paris we saw the world-class attractions, but we had just as much fun getting to know the people at the neighborhood bakery, or seeing the different mix at a French bookstore, or learning about the history of 4 generations of Chinese in Paris in our neighborhood. Each city has its marquee attractions, but they're not all that different from each other. Plus, we got a lot better communicating after a week in one country. So that is kind of a nice idea. He says another vacation recommendation for families is to get a point-based timeshare membership. We bought a resale membership to WorldMark, and now we have access to dozens of resorts across the western U.S. We're staying at a waterfront resort outside of Seattle for spring break and spending a week in Hawaii next February. This cost about $3,500 for the membership and about $700 a year to get 1 to 2 weeks of lodging. The units are simple but large and usually have full kitchens, which helps keep the vacation affordable. You can also get a good deal on last-minute openings. Cheers, Peter Christensen.
Nice.
You know, that's something, Britta, I know that we've never really kind of talked about, the idea of like a timeshare that, we could kind of buy into and then, go somewhere different and travel to a different city or whatever. I mean, that's not a bad idea in and of itself, because you could go see a whole bunch of different areas. And like he said, if it's like your initial buy-in, but then if it's like $700 a year and you get to go and spend like a week or 2 weeks in Hawaii for $700, I mean, you got to get there obviously and whatnot, but I mean, I can't even imagine how much money we spent for a week in our hotel at Disney World. I guarantee it was more than $700.
Probably, yes.
Probably by a lot. But
yes.
So that's an interesting idea, something to think about, right?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely something to look into. I mean, I know a number of people who have timeshares that go to different places. A lot of them go to Mexico frequently, it seems like, and get some good deals at some places in Cabo.
And then Peter's, kind of comment more about like just go to one place and kind of get to know that area versus kind of like,
right.
Don't go to Europe and then like, hit like 8 countries in 7 days sort of thing. Because, you're going to see probably a lot of time traveling, and then B, you're only going to see 1 or 2 things in each of the areas.
Right.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Going over to Facebook, Tim Paulin says, definitely Hawaii. My buddy goes every year for his birthday. Yes, I'm jealous. I like that idea. And we've talked about going to Hawaii for our anniversary. But every year, maybe he's got one of those WorldMark timeshares Peter was talking about. So thanks, Tim. Let's go over to the Twitters and let's see what we've got. Over on Twitter, we have Nerdish01000011 at dspin67. He says, I would travel to Italy. I want to visit Tuscany and other cities, drink wine, eat some good food from the local spots.
That sounds amazing. I've always wanted to visit Italy.
I think Italy would be a lot of fun, but man, that food, heavy on the carbs. Just saying.
Yeah, but you do a lot of walking when you're in Europe.
Yeah, I do
probably
a lot
about
of
the same amount as Disney.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can still put on weight on a vacation like that. Anyway, burn at -Excelsior at Dantes_Belmont says, the moon. Realistically, want to take the wife to one of these paradises on Earth, and it's a picture of what could be anywhere in the South Pacific, Hawaii, the Caribbean. You can see it's a beach with like these little kind of like villas that are kind of like right over the water. It looks beautiful.
That sounds amazing.
Callie Scott at Braves Callie says, I would love to go to Hawaii with at @BravesB_. That's her husband, Brian. She says, this one is on the list for sure. Once again, Hawaii coming in strong.
People love Hawaii. I had a coworker who just went there for the second time with like her whole family, and she was just like, they rented a VRBO right on the beach, said it was amazing.
I do like the idea. I mean, I know we've talked about it. I do like the idea of Hawaii, and I'm all for it. But like after going to the Caribbean, like I could go back to the Caribbean for a little while.
Yeah, totally.
Like I could do that, or I think Fiji also would be a great place to go.
I have a whole list of places that I want to go.
I don't
know if you want me to start.
No, because we'll be here forever. But I'm just saying, I like the idea of the warm places.
Yeah.
So, Yeah. Anyway, Super Friends, thank you so much for your answers. Every week you guys come into the Fortress of Nerditude, and you are a big part of why I continue doing this. I love interacting with you. Once again, you can get us in all the normal places. That is going to be our email, which is fortofnerd@gmail.com. You can get us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/fortofnerd. We're on Twitter @fortofnerd. We have a voicemail, which is 801-477-7687. And we're also on Instagram, fortofnerd. So that's all the places you can find us. You can also go to the website, fortofnerd.com. You could probably send up smoke signals or carrier pigeons or maybe carrier bats.
Ooh. Don't send them into our house, please.
1.5 carrier bats on their way.
I will reject them. Our children would freak out.
Britta, the Super Friends have been helping us out. What can they do for us this week?
They can head over to iTunes, give us a nice little review, 5 stars if you think we're worth it, and I think we are. Yeah, help us out. Give us a review. Make us, a little easier to find.
Yeah, get us on some lists and all that. Also, you can tell your friends. I know you got friends.
Yeah, maybe do that.
Tell your friends.
Yeah.
We can do that. So Britta, I've got you on this week because we are doing a movie club, which I know is kind of a little weird because you and I recorded a movie club like a month ago, but technically how it was released, we just had one 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
But this was a big movie.
Yes.
We went out and saw Captain Marvel.
Yes.
And this is a big MCU release. We knew that this was going to be something we were going to see, and we weren't going to want to sit on it for a couple weeks. So we went out and saw Captain Marvel on Friday night. We saw it opening night.
Yes, we did.
And I'm excited to talk about this movie. So let me ask you, just like right off the bat, like what's your like overall impression of the movie? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was entertaining. I liked a lot of things about it. I really liked the music. I know we're going to get into more of this stuff, but yeah, I'm 2 thumbs up on this one right now. It was fun.
So my overall impression of the movie is that it was a good movie. I had a lot of fun with it. It was entertaining. It kind of ticked all the boxes that I felt it needed to tick to be an origin story movie, which at this kind of, I don't want to say late in the game, but here it is, we've already had Avengers Infinity War, and we know that this character is going to come back and appear in Endgame. So now we're trying to have an origin story right before we're getting the big wrap-up of Avengers Endgame. And so I thought that even for an origin story kind of this late in the game, it was still really good, and it was fun. And I think that it did a few things that are probably going to stand out to specifically the comic book fans, the people that have known, Captain Marvel's background and Carol Danvers' background. And, they made some twists and some turns that I think will be well remembered for kind of how they handled this. So let's talk about this a little bit. Okay, so this movie obviously just had its opening weekend, and let's talk the big number that everyone wants to hear right up front. It made $456 million worldwide in its opening weekend, making it so far the second highest grossing film of this year. Now, that 456 worldwide is a huge number considering it's just the first weekend, and I think it made $158 million domestically here in the US, which is a massive, massive number. I know that they were saying that they kind of expected it was going to make some like initial projections where they said that they thought maybe it'd make like 120 million, 130 million kind of tops on its opening weekend. And of course it smashed that expectation. And it's, listen, Disney and Marvel Studios has made $18 billion worldwide from the MCU. And I would say probably worldwide by the time this movie is done before Endgame comes out, that's going to go from 18 billion to probably 19 billion.
Yeah.
I easily think that this is going to make $1 billion worldwide if not more.
Well, there's some big numbers.
So, yeah, just slightly.
Just a little bit.
So it makes huge money its opening weekend, which is a good sign. It's going to be a good lead into Endgame, which is nice. But I want to go to the very beginning of this movie. How does every Marvel movie open up, Britta?
The little like Marvel comic thing that says Marvel with all the comics on it.
Yes, it says Marvel Studios, and it kind of flips through shots
like all
of
the characters. And
the
stuff.
characters, right?
Yeah.
So like in the Avengers, they kind of show all the Avengers. In in the Iron Man movies, they show Iron Man. So I'm fully expecting Captain Marvel. And by the way, let me stop here. By the way, this is going to contain spoilers. This whole podcast from this point on is going to contain spoilers. You've been warned. Okay. So I was fully expecting the Marvel Studios with the little kind of flipping and showing the characters.
The typical stuff.
I was expecting to see Brie Larson and to see Captain Marvel, and expecting to see shots from the comic books and whatnot. Instead, what Marvel Studios did was they showed every single cameo by Stan Lee.
Yeah,
and And the moment that started, like, I was struggling to kind of hold back the emotion because obviously Stan Lee has just recently passed away, and he's the creator of so much of what we have now in this big MCU. And so they're showing all these clips and showing all the little cameos, and then after it said Marvel Studios, it just went blank, and then it basically came up and it said like, thank you, Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And
it was like
then the movie started,
but just like so emotional at the same time.
I thought it was just a beautiful tribute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was the perfect way, without being like super heavy-handed right up at the front, but just to be like, let's show something, let's honor the man, and let's thank him. And then let's get the movie rolling. Let's not stand this forever. And so I thought it was a good way to do that versus like trying to do it like at the end or trying to do it like actually in the movie or something. But I gotta tell you though, right off the bat, I'm like, oh man, like, nope, not gonna cry. That's just that's butter. That's popcorn butter in my eye. I promise. That seriously, like that kind of got to me. But I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was perfect. So, Captain Marvel, just like, I don't want to like talk too much necessarily about the plot, but the whole idea of Captain Marvel is that Carol Danvers, who is a human, somehow gets the ability to become Captain Marvel. She gains these extraordinary powers, and she, kind of goes off and is with the Kree, with the Star Force, and she helps fight the Skrulls, right? That's kind of like the comics and whatnot. But this movie kind of changes some things, right? So when we see her, she's already part of the Star Force. She's already, she's going by the name Veers, and she's doing her thing.
Right.
And what's kind of going on, the interesting thing about this is that she has like amnesia, basically. Something had happened. She has amnesia. She can't really remember her past. All she knows is her mentor, Jan Rog, and him training her to control her abilities and to, fight with the Kree to take out the Skrulls, who are these shape-shifting aliens who have been raging war for centuries with the Kree, right?
Yes.
Some things happen. She ends up crashing to Earth, and it's set in the 1990s, and she comes crashing into that blockbuster, which everyone's kind of familiar with. So let me ask you this now, okay? This is kind of the setup of the story. This isn't too far from what you would see in the trailers. She crashes to Earth. She's in the 90s. How did you feel this movie did for showing the time period and making this feel like it was the 90s?
I think, well, for me, it actually took a little bit to realize it was the 90s. I knew it had to be earlier because a blockbuster. Hello. Like, that's like quintessential, you know, earlier time period. And it for me, once he started playing some of the music, that helped solidify the time period. And just some of the technology they had, you know, they had pagers and things like that, that just kind of like helped really solidify that time period. 'Cause I don't know if they ever said what year it was. I didn't really pay attention if they did.
Said 1995.
Yeah. See, I totally missed that. So it took me a minute. And then I realized we were in the 90s because, like, you know, she's wearing a Nine Inch Nails t-shirt and flannel and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there was some, like, if you're a kid that grew up in the 90s, like, you'll love this because there's just a lot of very quintessential 90s things that just will make you laugh and entertain you, I think.
See, I actually disagree with you a little bit.
Really?
I don't think there was enough 90s.
Okay.
It was one of those things where when she lands, you see the blockbuster, she's changing, and she's got the Nine Inch Nails jacket on, and at one point he's like, lose the flannel. And she does, but like, if you pull the music out, which is a kind of a separate thing, we'll get to in a little bit, but realistically, you got the pager, you got maybe like the Nine Inch Nails and the flannel kind of around her waist, and you got the, you know, the blockbuster and kind of stuff in there. But kind of after that, you really don't get any more. There's not a lot of visual references to, hey, this is something in the 90s. Like, I started kind of thinking, like, when you see a movie set in the 80s or the 70s, like, we go back to when Rogue One came out, all the hairstyles and the mustaches on all the guys in that movie screamed 1970s hairstyles and kind of the way it was shot. Same thing when you see movies set back in the 80s. With this, I looked at it and I went, this could be now, except for, you know, a few of the things like with the pager and whatnot. Like, after it kind of got through some like the Easter egg type things and kind of trying to frame that it was the 90s, then there was not many subtle references or references visually to kind of help remind you, yes, this is still in the 1990s, other than kind of, you know, Nick Fury and Coulson's kind of like de-aging, so they're supposed to look 25 years younger. But you kind of forget that because you just kind of get used to seeing them like that. And so I kind of felt like it was a little lighter on the 90s than I thought it was going to be. Okay. I was really anticipating it being a little more stronger presence of like hey, this is kind of a period piece. We're back in the 90s, mid 90s, you know, this is, you know, almost 30 years ago, that sort of thing.
Well, and I think part of the problem with that though is there wasn't as much to show because they weren't around a lot of other people in this movie. It was mostly fighting the Kree and the Skrulls, which they're not going to show that they're 90s because they're from other planets. You see it a lot in her best friend. She definitely has like a totally 90s haircut and look to her, in my opinion. And they're not like going to the mall to see all the stuff. You know, they're not in places where you're going to see a lot of that really typical 90s kind of stuff.
Okay, maybe, but there was opportunities when like they go to her friend's house and they see her daughter. Her daughter's just kind of wearing some like random generic shirt. Like she could have been wearing like a New Kids on the Block shirt, or she could have had, she could have had like a poster of like Alanis Morissette on her wall, or like she could have like when she was like, look, I got your stuff and I kept it in the box. Like the box could have had, some other stuff that would have kind of locked in the time period a little bit more.
Sure.
So like I just kind of felt like there was maybe some missed opportunities that they could have done little things to just help drive that home just a little bit more. I just felt it was a little lighter than I would have liked because I kind of got to a point where I kind of forgot that we were in the 90s. It was just kind of like, we're just on Earth.
Yeah, I could see that, but I also felt like they weren't trying to like throw it in your face. They were just saying this happened earlier and we're going to be moving on anyway. But I felt like the strongest part where they came out with the 90s stuff, I felt like was definitely the soundtrack and the music. Because, I mean, most of that music, as it was playing, I was like, this is all stuff I listened to in, like, junior high and high school. Like, it just took me back.
So let's talk then about the music. So yes, I agree that pretty much all the music was from the 90s era, but I actually, even though I know it's from the 90s and I remember all this music, extremely, extremely well, most of this music I think was actually picked not necessarily just for the 90s, but more of because most of the music was picked by was artists that were led by females, so female vocalists, females, all female groups, groups that had a female lead singer. The only really two exceptions was "Come As You Are" by Nirvana. Right. And "Man on the Moon" by REM. Those were the only two songs that weren't, because otherwise, here's kind of what you had. You had "What a Man" by Salt and Pepper, "Connection" by Elastica, "Only Happy When It Rains" by Garbage, "Waterfalls" by TLC, "Just a Girl" by No Doubt, "Celebrity Skin" by Hole, "Crazy on You" by Heart, "Kiss Me Deadly" by Lita Ford, "You Gotta Be" by Des'ree, and that's kind of the big thrust. And so obviously this is a groundbreaking movie in the MCU. It's the first movie that is being directed by a female. It's the first movie that has a female superhero in the lead. And you can tell that they're trying to kind of drive that kind of theme home with the fact that, she's this super powered woman and she's in the 90s and she's kicking butt. And so they wanted all the music to kind of fit that theme, kind of the overall message that, she doesn't need some superhero man to step in and save her. She can do all this by herself, which is a great message and a great theme. And it's very empowering. I'm saying this as, a complete white male, but you get the idea. It still doesn't invalidate the point. It's very empowering, but I felt like all that music maybe was pushed more for that reason. And then it just happens to be that they found stuff that was empowering female centric music that just happened to be from the 90s. Whereas, they could have played some Destiny's Child or something and, it would have had the same theme, but not been the 90s.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, but also you do have to remember that the 90s really was this girl-centric female power time. That's when all the You Go Girl and girl power, a bunch of that stuff was really big in the 90s. So I think it was a good time period. I don't know if this originally in the comics happened in the 90s or not. I have no idea.
No.
I'm assuming not. But I'm guessing that's probably why they picked that time period, because that's kind of what was going on during the 90s. It was a lot of female empowerment, and it was a lot of the female rockers and musicians and things like that. And so I can see why they meshed those together and why it does lend itself, in my opinion, to this movie and, the female empowerment, girl power kind of message they're kind of going with, which I feel showed in a lot of aspects, not only the music and Captain Marvel herself, but also her best friend, which I'm spacing her name right now, Maria or something?
Monica.
Okay. Because even her story, which you don't get a whole lot of her backstory or anything like that, but they don't paint her as the woe is me, sad, pathetic, can barely make it single mom. She's a strong female pilot, working hard, teaching her daughter to be a strong female as well. That theme is there throughout the whole thing. And I think that fits well into the 90s era specifically.
Something I did read just the other day after seeing the movie, and I didn't really kind of think about this until the other day, was that a big part of this with the music and kind of some of the messages, female empowerment and seeing Carol Danvers overcoming the fact, that she was, basically kidnapped and brainwashed and she's got this amnesia, is that they kind of show these flashbacks through her life, when she was a kid and she crashes this go-kart and when she fell down at the beach and when she did this thing and that thing. And and then, she's like being this pirate and falling down when she's training. Like, it showed like kind of all these things of like her kind of falling down. And then they showed kind of this scene of like her kind of standing up, and they were playing some kind of, big musical moment at the time, showing like, even though she's been knocked down, she stands up. And while like that message I thought was really good, I also felt like because they were trying to show like so many like little clips throughout her life where she's continued to stand back up, after adversity or after a trial, and she's not going to quit or whatever, because they did so many of them, it felt like that maybe they could have done it differently, where they could have cut it down to like 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 and spent a little bit more time, so that those moments of her standing back up like really had some real gravity to the moment. Like, not only is she just standing back up and she's going to keep going, but like it just maybe would have really kind of kicked in. Like, she's a real bad A. Like, she's not just like going to stand back up. And there was someone said like this was a kind of a missed moment, that they could have done that just a little differently and really, really kind of kicked in that message that not only is she, all for like getting back up, but like she's a bad A and like you don't want to mess with her. And
right.
And I started thinking back to the first Captain America movie, the first Avenger, and the way they kind of did his backstory, where they showed him being like this like little weak kid, but yet he has this really like strong like moral compass, right? Even though he can't fend off and beat up the bad guys, he still wants to jump in and try. He still wants to protect people that are weaker than him and do the right thing. And then once he gets the powers and whatnot, then he has the ability to do that as well. And I kind of like thinking about that, I was like, not that it was done badly, because it really was not, but maybe once again an opportunity that they could have done that a little bit better, and maybe they can expand upon that, because there's no doubt with the money this is making that we're going to get a sequel.
For sure.
No doubt about that.
Yeah.
So all that kind of being said, because of this, whole idea of, you can't have a hero without her, that you saw during some of the marketing, and the fact that there was, this is kind of a lot about female empowerment, but it is, at the heart of it, is an origin story, and it's kind of a buddy movie, because it's kind of like, Nick Fury and Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, kind of buddying up, and you see the fact that this is the first time Nick Fury realizes that there's other people from other planets, because he doesn't believe any of that. We see Agent Coulson for the first time, and like, they're much younger, and they're just kind of becoming well aware of this wider world out there that's around them, right?
Yeah.
It's a buddy movie. It's also kind of a buddy movie with her friend, with Monica, and at the same time, it's also a movie about, overcoming your limitations, overcoming the restraints that people try to put on you.
Right.
And she does that with, trying to overcome her mentor, Jan Rog, the artificial intelligence from the Kree homeworld. And once she finally learns, that she's actually being held down and held from her full potential, that's the moment when, like, she sets herself free and really just has the ability to fully embrace who she is and to kick butt and take names. So, let me ask you a question. You're looking at this as an origin story, kind of with all the kind of the idea of, the female empowerment. Where do you slot this movie in compared to other MCU movies? Like, is this going to be near your top? Is it going to be near your middle? Is it going to be near your bottom?
That's a good question. I don't know yet. Like, I feel like all day I was thinking about it, and I was like, I need to go see it again, because I need to like watch everything again. And I was like confusing myself about some things, trying to figure some things out. And I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It has some elements, like the soundtrack and things like that, kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy, but yet I still like Guardians of the Galaxy better. But I don't know. I mean, it's right in there with a lot of them, but I can't decide where on the scale it is yet. I'm not ready to decide that yet. Sorry.
Okay. So I kind of looked at this and I kind of like, I do want to go back and see it again. I mean, I really do. But I look at it and I'm like, as far as an origin movie, it's a solid origin movie. As far as just kind of a Marvel movie on its own, I think it's a solid movie. I would say that it's probably going to be, for me, kind of in the middle of the pack, but maybe a little on the higher side of the middle. Only because there is some just absolute amazing movies in the MCU already. Sure. And the bar is high. Now, if this was like the first MCU movie we got out of all of them, this would be, this would be one of the harder ones to top. I mean, it would take some of the bigger ones to come along to kind of knock it down a couple pegs. But this is, the most recent one we have. And so like we've got things recently like Civil War and Winter Soldier and Ragnarok and Infinity War and Black Panther. Yeah. And so there's been some big heavy hitters already. One of the other things though, I think that this movie really kind of had going for it is that all of this stuff that was filmed to look like it was in California, like the test flight stuff, her being a pilot, was all actually filmed like in California. So it felt like really authentic and kind of like the race through and the fight scenes on the train in LA, like was filmed in and around those areas. And so it felt authentic. It didn't feel like hey, we're trying to say this is LA, but this was really filmed in Vancouver. Right. Which sometimes I think movies kind of suffer a little bit when they're like, hey, this is supposed to be New York City, but really we filmed in Pittsburgh because it was cheaper. So I don't know. I mean, there's kind of that, but like getting into some of the spoilery things, Britta. Okay. We get introduced to something called the Flurgan.
My gosh, this is my favorite part of this movie is the Flurgan. First of all, the name is Flurgan.
Right. It's like the most ridiculous sounding name possible.
Yes, you're like, that is made up. The first time they say it, oh, don't mess with it, it's a Flurgan. Like, you think they're making a joke and it's ridiculous. I love it.
Yep. It's obviously not just a cat, it's some sort of weird cat / demigorgon thing.
I tried to explain this to Jackson the other day because he asked me about the movie and he was asking me like what I liked in the movie, and I was like, oh, well, there was this little cat that's actually called a Flurgan, and he's like, a Flurgan? And I said, yeah, basically it has like an octopus inside of it. And he's like, what?
Yeah, that's not going to make any sense to an almost 5-year-old.
No, but he thought it was the funniest thing ever. And so did I. It's quite hilarious. And his story with Nick Fury is just adorable.
Yeah, that's how Nick Fury loses his eye, right?
The Flurgan.
So one of the big twists on this movie was that the reality is that the Kree are actually the bad guys in this film, and that the Skrulls are actually just kind of seeking refuge. Now that doesn't mean that the Skrulls, because the leader of the Skrulls kind of that's there in this film says like, I've done, like, my hands aren't clean. I've done lots of horrible things. Right. So meaning that basically not all Skrulls are good guys, that most of the Skrulls still could be bad guys in the MCU. But this particular group is actually just trying to find a home. They've been pursued and punished and killed. And
there's a lot of like women and children in their group.
Right. And that the lady that originally was helping Carol Danvers, that was the pilot, she was actually researching basically a light speed technology that was powered by the Tesseract. And she actually was a Kree. She wasn't a human. And of course, Carol Danvers tries to sacrifice herself to stop the evil Kree from getting this when she finds out. And that's how she gets, imbued with her powers when she tries blowing it all up. So it's kind of a twist because if you've read the comics, the Skrulls are the bad guys, the Kree are the good guys. We see Korath, who is, we saw working for Ronan the Accuser in Guardians of the Galaxy. We see Ronan the Accuser in this. And you can tell, like, he's just kind of a military guy in this film. He's not like the religious zealot that he will become. So obviously there's things that are going to happen in the intervening time. Yep. There's a little funny kind of interplay about, the whole pager that Nick Fury has. And at the end, Captain Marvel ends up kind of giving him a powered up version of the pager, and
reach her across like galaxies and stuff.
Right. Which is interesting because we see him at the end of Avengers Infinity War call her. And then, of course, we see during the mid-credits scene, we see Captain America, we see, Bruce Banner, we see
Black
Widow, Natasha Romanoff, and they're basically like talking like, we don't know what this is doing. We've hooked this up to a power source, but this thing just shut off for some reason. They're like, well, try to reboot it, keep sending the signal. And they're like, we don't even know if this signal's getting to anyone. And then you hear like, you called, and like Captain America turns around and Captain Marvel's standing there.
Yeah.
So we definitely know she's in Endgame. Like, obviously
so
they took that from Endgame. But someone asked recently Kevin Feige a question, which I thought was really interesting, and I'm going to read this because I thought it was kind of funny.
Okay.
Peter Serretta of Slash Film was talking with Kevin Feige. He says, I have a nitpicky question, gotta ask. Kevin Feige says, I'm ready. He says, and I know you probably have an answer for this. Why didn't Nick Fury use the pager until Infinity War? Because this big hole opened up in the sky and aliens attacked New York. And Kevin Feige's response says, well, I'll say two things. One, she does say it's got to be a real emergency, right? Yeah. And then Peter responds, says, because that was just a city, I guess, not the whole world. And then Kevin Feige's response was, the other thing I'd say is, how do you know he never hit it? How do we know he never pushed it before? We've never seen him push it before, but that doesn't mean he never did. Okay. So kind of interesting, right? Because it's one of these, people start looking now for these plot holes. They're like, well, okay, well, if Nick Fury has had, for the last 25 years, this souped up pager that can call Captain Marvel, which, let's be honest, Captain Marvel is basically kind of like a Marvel version of Superman.
Yeah, totally.
She has the ability to fly. She's super strong. She has the ability to control like energy blasts from her body, and Superman kind of do that from his eyes. Mm-hmm. They have similar color schemes.
Yes.
It's kind of that idea, right? And so if she's super powerful, like, why wouldn't you call her in to help stop the invasion of New York? Why wouldn't you brought her in during the Age of Ultron and all the Ultron stuff? Why wouldn't you have brought her in when Thanos was first a threat?
You've got 14 other superheroes with all kinds of crazy powers. Why do you need another one?
Well, that's my thinking too, is that it would be easy to say, well, Nick Fury believed that, the Avengers could do this, the whole Avengers initiative.
Strong enough.
Yeah, and then it wasn't until he ran into someone that finally his Avengers couldn't handle, that's when he realized, okay, it's time to bring in someone who can do this job.
That's what I would say too.
That makes sense, but it's kind of interesting, we see some things happen and some potential for plot holes, but then again, a good way of trying to knock down the plot holes, but it's interesting. I like it. I like little details like that, and of course that Kevin Feige has to have an answer for all these kind of questions because
sure.
Yeah. People are going to ask, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So, Britta, just kind of looking back at Captain Marvel, you definitely said you want to go see this again. I want to go see this again. There was a lot of people online before the movie that came out were trying to knock it down and trying to start like negative ad campaigns and trying to game the system on Rotten Tomatoes to try to make, people not want to go see it and make it look wrong. Yeah. And I know that Disney and Marvel have been combating this and they did a really good job in trying to like knock kind of down some of the internet trolls. Obviously, it didn't affect the box office. I mean, like $158 million is like crazy money. That's a big weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'm glad that that's kind of like, I'm really kind of getting sick of, people knocking down movies before movies are even released, before, anyone's ever seen them, and they start trying to, rig, ratings and rig, sites that people use reliably. And so I'm glad that this didn't have that issue and that it's just knocking out expectations. This thing's going to be a massive hit for Marvel.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, people are smart enough generally to make their own decisions once it comes to this kind of stuff. And, I know a number of people who don't even rely on critics and things like that because they generally disagree with a lot of the popular types of movies and stuff. But yeah, I think this goes beyond that, and it's just a exciting, fun movie that I just think most people can kind of get behind.
Okay. So let me ask you, if you're going to give it a grade, kind of like the old, high school grading scale, what kind of grade would you give this movie?
I'm definitely giving this one like an A, I would say.
I'm going to say a solid B+.
Okay.
I don't think it's quite in the A territory, but it's definitely not much lower than a B+. I definitely am excited to see it again, and I'm really excited to see, A, what Captain Marvel can do in Avengers Endgame, and then B, I'm also excited to see what could happen in another, Captain Marvel movie after all the Endgame stuff. Because I think there's a lot of room for this character to grow in the MCU. And I thought Brie Larson did a really good job in the acting and portraying kind of the brainwashed amnesia aspect of it. And then once that was kind of removed, I thought she did a really good job of, kind of coming back into like who she would have been beforehand. And I thought it did a real good job. So
yeah,
I want to see it more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see where this character goes, what she does. Obviously super excited for Endgame. I mean, that's going to be awesome. And I'm really excited to see what she does in this one, because I'm just really excited for this movie.
Yeah.
But I loved Captain Marvel. It was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I don't know what else to say.
It had a lot of good humor to it. It had some good heart to it. And overall, a very, very enjoyable movie. So Super Friends, I want to hear from you. My question of the week was, what did you think of Captain Marvel? Where do you rate this with the other MCU movies? And I'll be curious to hear from you. Hit us at all the normal places: our email, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, our voicemail, carrier bats, whatever you want to do, send them our way, and we will read those next week. Britta, once again, thank you for coming over and doing the movie club with me. I always enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
As always, thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure.
Well, from all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude, to all of you out there, wherever you may be, may the Force be with you. Always.